All right, welcome. This is Pat Strubbe, and I have had many clients ask for assistance, tips, suggestions, help with seeing accounts online and accessing accounts, understanding the information. So this is my attempt at using a sample account to kind of walk you through what I would look through in Orion. So we're going to give this a shot, and I hope this is really helpful. So hopefully you have information you can see on the screen there. The site is login.orionadvisor.com. Generally, we would assign you a login and then a temporary password. That is usually, I believe, only good for 24 hours for security reasons. So we would ask that you log in as soon as possible, and then you would immediately change that to a password of your own. Of course, we want that to be as secure as possible. So I have my login and password entered already. So I'm going to sign in here and take you on a little tour. So we just have they call these demo accounts, so you'll see everything load. I am a hypothetical family. I'm assuming here you can see in the middle, kind of lower middle bottom of the screen, we've got a couple of nice sized IRAs, and then we have a couple of Roth IRAs. So I'm going to assume this is a married couple. And I believe in this example they've been with us for about a year and a half, and that was just done so you can see some historical information. What you're going to see on that front page is just a kind of as it obviously says, an overview on its most basic level. If you're checking in once a month, once every few months, once a year, that would be a way where you could see, hey, how much money do I have with preservation specialists. One important note, generally speaking, there would never be any foundation accounts listed here because those companies unfortunately just don't play nicely with most online access, and certainly not with Orion. Depending on how you have your roof investments handled, they may or may not be included here. Basically, any accounts that you have with Equity Trust are going to be included here, and generally speaking, anything else is not. So we do have another online access if you want to see something with all your accounts with us. However, that software does not provide as much detail. So this is the one that most of our clients use most of the time, and why I wanted to take you through some examples. Now, from the way I look at Orion, there's a couple different ways to get at almost everything that you want to see. So what we have right here is an overview showing the total balance of accounts, showing the market value of each account, and this is just listing that we have about half of the money in those two large accounts. There's a couple of things called asset category and asset class. I'll go ahead and show you those. I will admit that we have worked long and hard over years with Orion to try and make these as accurate as possible. They're still nowhere near where we would want them to be, so please don't be concerned if these numbers are different than you were expecting. This is showing these clients having about 2/3 of their money in quote-unquote alternative investments and about 1/3 in equity. I will tell you as we go into the investments, I doubt most of their money, 30% of it's actually in equity or stock market. That's just kind of Orion using a default category for some of these things. The idea is that an asset category is big picture, asset class is drilling into a little more detail. So we'll take a look at asset class and see what kind of goodies come up here. Hopefully our internet is working. It's loading. There we go. So it's still saying about half is in alternative, 22% mutual fund, 8% REITs or real estate investment trusts, another 8% alternatives, which is confusing because you've got 50% here. I think that's because of the two accounts. And then 8% in a private REIT or real estate trust. If you are watching this very closely, you might say, well, what's the difference between a private real estate investment trust and a non-traded real estate investment trust? That's a great question. I wouldn't be able to answer that right off the top. So someone handling things at Orion just puts things into these asset classes, and that's just the way it's set up initially. What I wanted to show you first is moving along the top. Holdings would be probably the most common place that I think that we would have people interested in looking. So what you're going to see here is, keep in mind, this is all of the accounts. So you're going to see everything in one place. And then the main tool that I use in Orion is just kind of using these little arrows. So anytime you have an arrow like that, there's usually more information. So it says, okay, we've got $585,000 in whatever they're calling alternative investments. So if I click on that, now I see, okay, we've got a Wildermuth Endowment Fund, we've got a Griffin Real Estate Fund, a Total Income Real Estate Fund, a HPI, which is Hamilton Point portfolio, and then we have a Dunham Fund. Now, would I allocate all of those to there? No, I would not. But if you are someone who's just kind of checking to see how your accounts are doing, this is a place where you can go and you can see, oh yeah, I remember Wildermuth was 204,000 last time, now it's 205,000. So it just gives you a quick idea of how your funds are doing. So you can open and close those as much as you want. We can go into mutual funds. We have a Scion Credit Fund and a Resource Credit Fund there. We have ARC Trust in here. So you can see a number of the different holdings. And you could, if you wanted to, also change by category or class. It's still showing the same total dollar amount, still showing the same market value. You might be wondering, why would I do it one way or the other? I don't think it matters at all. It's personal preference. This is a way for you to see total balances on all your accounts. Now, since we're talking about holdings, you might say, well, I'd be actually more interested in seeing that by account. So here, we can click here on account, and then I think what we could also do is click on one of the accounts over here as well. Yeah, so that's going to give you the same information. So it's just two different places to see the same materials. And now I'm still in holdings, so I click on this little arrow, and I see what I hold in my account. So if you've got a husband and wife, and the husband has certain things that they own in their IRA, the wife has certain things they own, you want to just look at one account, you can look at all the holdings together, completely up to you how you do that. I'm going to go back to the overall. Okay, now I am. All right, so I got myself a little confused there because I got myself just into one account, and you see over here 580,000, and I wanted to continue with all of the funds, so you can see the total value there. I think the second area most of our clients spend a lot of time and find a lot of value is activity. So if you ask our team, hey, what are the questions you get the most? How much money have I taken out of my accounts? How much have I put in? How much am I making in dividends? All of that information is here. The most important thing I can share with you is this timeline is going to make a huge difference in what you're finding. So, for example, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to back this up to the beginning of 2018 just to give us a longer time frame. And what you want to do after you do that is you just hit this little kind of circle, and that's going to load that additional activity. Now, I had put January of 2018, and it came up as May 29th, so that is when this hypothetical client opened their accounts. So you could type in January of 2000. It's just going to back up as far back as the data has. Okay, so where do we start here? Well, hopefully some of these are a little confusing. These are terms that we use in our office, and I have to kind of double check them sometimes. Maybe a logical place to go is contributions. So this is stating that these clients have contributed $1.2 million to their accounts. And you say, well, what is that made up of? And we can see it here. So in May of 2018, we have these various transfers that were added to the account, and then a couple of deposits in July, and then another one in May of 2019. So that makes up the total $1.2 million. How about distributions? Well, so this is money coming out of the account. Now, this particular client has only taken these lump sum chunks of money out of the accounts. If you are retired and drawing income off of your accounts, then you would actually see monthly systematic withdrawals that are being sent out to you. And I believe you would see here the total amount of the withdrawal. If it's taxable, you would see the amount you receive, and then you would also see the amount that's withheld for taxes. So that can be very helpful. Sometimes, let's say you're taking $1,000 a month, but you're only getting 800 a month and you're withholding 200 for taxes, it's sometimes is helpful to see that there's actually $1,000 coming out of the account every month instead of the 800 because obviously Uncle Sam wants their share. Okay, so let's look at then exchange in and exchange out, I think is where I want to go next. No, that's not right. See, so I forget these things too. So merge in. Merge in is what were the assets that were merged into your account. So this particular client had all these different funds that we transferred in May and June of 2018, and so we can just kind of see those things. Merge out, I believe, are transfers out of the account. Again, you can see some in and out kind of going back and forth on a number of these things. And then exchange in is what are the investments we made. So this particular investment can go back here and say, oh, that's right, I've had the Scion, Total Income, Griffin, Resource, and then soon after Arc Trust and HPI or Hamilton Point. Those I've had all those since end of May or June of 2018, so I'm going to have more return on those, whereas I have these other investments like Red Oak, for example. I've just made that investment here in June of 2019, Peachtree September 28th. So of course you can't be earning interest on investment before you've made it, so this is a helpful way to see your timeline of when your funds went into all your particular investments. Hopefully the most helpful area here is dividends and interest. So what this client can do is they can go all the way back to when they started with us, and they can see, okay, starting at the end of May, we started getting a couple of very small dividends, and then as we start getting more full processes of dividends, you can see larger amounts. So Resource already in June paid a $1,700 dividend. I believe you would be able to see whether these go to cash or whether they're reinvested. So I think there's actually a separate category if it's reinvested dividends. So in this case, this client is actually paying these to cash. Some investments require it to go to cash, some give you the choice. So these would be a couple different areas that you can see it. Another example I get questions on is how often does something pay dividends? Well, we can help you get that information, but you can also find it here if you want to. So for example, you can see Scion, Ares Credit Fund paid a dividend on 6/29, and they paid another one on 7/31. So they are clearly paying monthly dividends. However, if we go to Resource on 6/22, we can quickly go up this list, and we don't see them again until September 21st. So Resource is paying a larger dividend, but on a quarterly basis. So this is an area where you can see these things. You can notice something like the Wildermuth Endowment Fund, which is a fund we like in a lot of circumstances. They pay quarterly dividends, but they can vary greatly. So I didn't check this ahead of time, but let's see here. We've got a couple of holdings that paid $300 in September. And then if we come up to December, okay, so it was still, well, so we have additional dividends that were paid out in December, so that we paid about $300 again, and then another dividend here. So if you are thinking, hey, maybe I want to start taking my monthly income, how much am I generating in dividends? This would be a wonderful way to do that. Those are the most common places that we have people looking. I will say there's another area called performance. I will admit that I'm not extremely savvy in how this works. My feeling about Orion is generally a lot of the performance numbers don't seem to include the dividends that you earn. So that can be a huge problem because a lot of our clients are looking for that income to come out of the account. So I was kind of playing around with this before I started recording. You can see this account is showing that the client has made 4.4% on this account, and you can actually open up all those holdings and see what that was made up of. So this is saying, for example, that Peachtree made 6% for the year, Griffin made 6.9%, so those are the better performers in the portfolio. However, I noticed when I looked at this account and said, ooh, this one's lost 4% for the year. When we go into that, we actually don't see anything that's lost. So I have to admit that we don't use this very often. What most of our clients look at is, hey, how much money did I give you when we started? How much have we earned? How much have we withdrawn? And what do we have now? Most of our clients are trying to avoid spending down the principal as much as possible. Of course, that depends on performance, but this is just an example of some of the information that you can find. That is primarily what I would look at. I would believe when I'm using Orion for my own personal accounts or for yours, as we have advisor access to everyone's accounts, I'm spending 99% of my time in holdings, looking at the portfolio, making sure everything looks good, and then also in activity. I'm spending all of my time in one of those two places. If you email me and say, hey, Pat, I'm taking $1,000 a month, can I bump that up to $1,200 a month? We're going to go right here and we're going to start looking at how much we're making in dividends and make sure that that's going to work out just fine. If you call us up in a panic and say, hey, we just booked a European cruise and we need 10 grand, where should we take it from? Then I'm probably going to go to holdings first, and I'm going to start looking and seeing how much cash you have in the accounts. In this case, well, we've only got 3,300, and then I'm going to start looking at what the different investments are and what can be sold. So that is my rundown of Orion. I hope you found that helpful. We will start sharing this as soon as possible, and I'll be eager to get feedback from you on if this was helpful and if there's other information that we can provide to you and help you out. Please let us know. Reach out to us by phone or email. Usually be our back office. Tanya and Rachel are awesome at kind of taking your feedback and also trying to answer questions whenever possible. Hope that helped, and hope you have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon.